All right, let's be real. When people talk about slavery, they usually start with the American South, plantations, and the Civil War. But that's barely scratching the surface. The roots of slavery go way deeper than that. And today, we're diving into the real history, where it started, how it spread, and why it was designed to last for centuries. Trust me, you're gonna want to stick around for this one. Slavery didn't start in America, and it sure didn't start with black people. But what happened over the course of a few hundred years turned it into one of the most brutal systems the world has ever seen. So let's break it down, step by step. So here's the deal. Slavery existed long before Europeans ever set foot in Africa. We're talking ancient Egypt, Greece, Rome, China, and even among some African kingdoms themselves. But here's the key difference. In many of these societies, slavery wasn't necessarily permanent or race-based. In ancient Rome, for example, enslaved people could actually buy their freedom. Some even climbed the social ladder and became wealthy. In some African societies, enslaved individuals could marry into the community or even become respected leaders. But in the 1400s, something changed. Europeans started looking at slavery as big business. The rise of the transatlantic slave trade. Enter the European colonizers. By the 1400s, countries like Portugal and Spain started exploring the coast of Africa, looking for resources. At first, they traded gold, spices, and other goods, but then they realized something. There was serious money in human trafficking. Now, some African rulers did participate in this trade, exchanging prisoners of war for European weapons and goods. But let's be clear, this wasn't some equal business transaction. The European demand for enslaved labor skyrocketed, and soon entire communities were being raided and ripped apart. And that brings us to one of the darkest journeys in human history. The Middle Passage, a journey of horror. Imagine this. You're kidnapped from your home, marched for miles to the coast, and crammed onto a ship with hundreds of other people, chained together, barely any space to move. The air is thick with sweat, sickness, and death. Welcome to the Middle Passage. Historians estimate that over 12 million Africans were forced onto these ships. The conditions? Absolutely brutal. People were packed so tightly they could barely breathe. Food was scarce, disease was rampant, and many didn't make it. Some even chose to jump overboard rather than face what lay ahead. And those who survived? They were about to enter a whole new nightmare. Slavery in the Americas, the business of human lives. The moment those ships hit land, people were sold like livestock. Families torn apart, names stripped away. Enslaved Africans were forced to work on sugar, tobacco, and cotton plantations under horrific conditions. And just in case anyone got any ideas about escaping, slave owners made sure to pass laws that locked them into this system for life. These laws said black people weren't human, they were property. And this wasn't just some random injustice. This was a carefully planned system designed to keep power in the hands of the few. The justifications for slavery, how they sold the lie. Now, how do you convince an entire society that owning people is okay? You create a lie, a big one. Slave owners and governments started spreading fake science and religious arguments to justify slavery. They claimed black people were naturally inferior, that they were better off as slaves. And yeah, people actually believed this nonsense because it was profitable for them to believe it. This is where the power of propaganda kicks in. The more people saw these racist ideas in books, newspapers, and laws, the more they accepted it as normal. And that's how an entire economy was built, on the suffering of millions. Resistance, the seeds of rebellion. But here's what they don't tell you enough. enslaved people never accepted their fate. From day one, they resisted. Some escaped and formed their own hidden communities. Others fought back in open revolts. Some, like Nat Turner, led violent uprisings. Others, like Frederick Douglass, used the power of education to fight back. The system of slavery was brutal, but black people never stopped fighting for freedom. And that resistance? It planted the seeds for future revolutions, civil rights movements, and ultimately, the fight for justice that continues today. Final thoughts and call to action. Slavery isn't just some chapter in a history book. It shaped the world we live in today. Understanding where it started helps us understand why its effects are still with us. So, the next time someone tries to oversimplify history, hit them with the facts. And if you want to keep learning about Black history, rebellion, and how it connects to today, make sure you subscribe, like the video, and drop a comment below. What part of this history surprised you the most? Let's talk about it.